Let's talk about how you can maintain and scale your community relationship. As you grow your community, especially if you are a global company, it's important to recognize that you'll have community groups in different places. There are many ways to scale this depending on your product or service. Some community initiatives are done synchronously. So for example, it can be through org-hosted events like conferences in the photos shown on the left. These are hosted by, this one is hosted by Wikimedia Foundation. Or it can be gatherings that are self-organized like the one on the right. These are Duolingo users all over the world. These days, a lot of these are done mostly online through webinars, conferences, or small online groups. These are good ways to find evangelists that can help you run events, collect feedback locally, or do so in a more targeted approach. So for community initiatives that are done asynchronously, this is done online. So these are places where there's usually a point of contact, like a marketing or community manager interacting directly in public. What you can do is you can also invite members from your own team, perhaps a product manager or a designer who will find it helpful to listen to customer feedback. Doing so will maintain that relationship at scale because your community can, number one, revisit this post anytime that they want to. And then second, they will feel that they're talking to real people. And these connections are done through direct interactions where community feels that they are talking or speaking with you one-on-one as opposed to a faceless brand. The next thing that you should do is create a community engagement plan. So create content calendars to help you stay on track and plan interactions in advance. So one of the biggest mistakes that you can do is not think ahead because then you will lose some of these members. You can also create portfolio of community activities to maintain engagement throughout the year. So a portfolio of activities mean that you can create different types of activities that will engage the users in different touch points. And finally, you can track or measure engagement across different channels. And the community is going to be very engaged in sharing their insights on improving your processes, solving product challenges, and discussing tools. You can post explanations on what you're building now, how you're doing so, and what are some of the design choices that you're making. And these can bring your community to your site and allow them to share that with other people. Doing this will maintain that strong connection with them, and many of them are actually invested in and willing to take their time to understand your product. And the reason why they do this is because that will help them maximize the usage of your products, which can then help them become more effective in using them. Now, going back to this community engagement plan, what you're doing here is capturing those insights and planning to connect with your community at the time that they are most engaged. So it's a very good way to keep that cycle going. Now, make sure that you also have a calendar for this. There's a lot of different events that you can do. It can be webinar, virtual events, community survey, onboarding emails, and so forth. What's key here is that it may feel that it's a one-way conversation or a one-way communication from you to them, but what you have to make sure that you're also giving them a chance to respond back to you. And this is why it's important to do this and post in areas where people can share this, because that's a very good way for you to scale and bring in more members into your site or your channel. And this is basically feedback loop at scale. So when there's a community request coming in, again, you can discuss this in areas that are accessible not only to existing members, but with new members as well. And then you do an internal check-in to share these ideas with your team to drive awareness, gather additional feedback, and discuss solutions. What you do then after is to share that outcome, but this time include not only those who ask the questions directly, but also those who may be interested in the topic. When you do this, you're inviting people to brainstorm with you and allow them to generate more ideas that can help you iterate in your future products. Finally, consider your community as an extension of your team. This is not that easy to do because that requires some level of trust. But what you can do is, number one, you can scale your volunteer or ambassador programs to bring in new community members. And these advocates can participate in more active ways and contribute better to your product or events. Look at who's stepping up to play a more active role and work with them to organize any of these workshops. And then finally, ask for help to invite others and again, treat them as additional members of your team. One of the things that we've done in our community is give additional permissions to one of our volunteers. Initially, there's only one community manager handling our forum. And we noticed that one of the volunteers were very helpful in flagging content or moderating posts that we've decided and discussed whether or not this person should have admin privileges. Now, it was a very interesting conversation and took us a while to discuss the pros and cons of doing so. In the end, we decided to go ahead with it because we know the person and we trust him. It was one of the best decisions that we've made because the community member had a lot of great ideas on how to build a healthier community. In fact, he configured a lot of the settings in areas that we didn't have time or we didn't see. So make sure that you collaborate with your community members effectively, and trusting them is going to be very important. If you're doing all of this, make sure that you amplify the voice of those members that share the same values or model the culture that you want to promote in your group. Recognize their work and find more ways to collaborate with them. They are usually the ones who are very happy, who would be strong promoters and advocates that will bring in more members. So in a way, you are scaling your team indirectly, bringing in more active members that can help generate more events, more content, and more workshops in the future. So these are the things that you can do to maintain and scale your community relationship.